Manager, do you want to do overtime? Me, first of all, I don't even want to do regular time.
Yeah, seriously. I think we should be safe, with all of our preparations and everything.
I don't know if we're safe. We'll have to disinfect the dice first before we get going. So, I'll be right back. I just need to get some alcohol and dip these in there. All right, what are we doing here? We are talking about gaming online, where we don't actually need these things.
Really? Oh man, I feel stupid now.
Yeah, me too.
Get this off here.
Anyway, welcome to Geek Query. I am Ink Blitz.
Hi, I am the Niche.
And we are joined today with a guest geek, Jamie. Hello, Jamie.
All right.
Jamie is another one of the DMs who runs in our circle, and we asked him to join us today as we talk about what every gamer is really thinking about right now, or trying to talk about, or trying to do, is remote gaming, because we can't game in person anymore. Before, we didn't have the fancy ways that we have now. Like when I was doing early, back in the late 90s. I was doing
the late 90s was so long ago.
I was doing D&D online by text. I did it on games called Mux, and we had dice rolls there. We had full programs on there that would do the dice and keep track of sheets, and that was our long distance remote D&D.
Yeah, well, I mean, for Jamie and me, Jamie, fun fact, is actually the first person who ever ran a game that I was a player in back in 1983, I think. Something like that. Yes, I played a bard because bards were broken in second edition, but we'll get onto that some other day.
By broken, you mean fun.
Yeah, they were fun, but they were also broken. I still play bards now, even though they're not broken anymore. So I have a feeling there was more to it than just the brokenness. But in any case, so yeah, so for when you talk about the old days of gaming, for Jamie and me, it's the school library on our lunch break, trying to get in one more room of the dungeon before we have to run off and go to our next class or whatever. So
yeah, you had.
I remember a session on the stairs behind the school, after school, in the brief window in which the whole group was there, but you and I were the only participants.
Yeah, well, that's that has a lot more to do with the play style than anything else. But
so basically, what you're saying is that remote gaming didn't actually really exist.
No, I mean there was no way to do remote gaming. There was no remote. I mean the best you could do would be like game over the telephone, which I actually kind of did gaming? With somebody.
No,
there was
gaming?
No Usenet. No.
Well, it was 1985. It was Usenet.
For me, remote gaming was walk 20 minutes to someone else's house.
Yeah. No, I mean Usenet was not publicly available. You could get it through like a university or something, but we were high school students, so but I did run somebody through a Star Wars campaign over the telephone, just a solo game, and that was as close to remote gaming as we got.
And that was back when long distance phone calls cost you 10 cents a minute.
Yes, well, fortunately they were in the same zip code, but but fast forward to just a few years ago, with our group, since Blitzy, you are in the Midwest.
I'm in the north. I'm in the wild north.
Yeah, and Jamie and I are on the East Coast, and Surfy's in California. So we had this group where 4 of us would be in one room, and 3 of the other players were remote, and before the days of COVID, and it worked all right. We had a webcam that was pointed at the map, so my 30 years of miniatures didn't go to waste.
It kind of worked.
Yeah, it wasn't perfect, but it was feasible. From our point of view, you know, the ones who were at the table could look at each other and look at the monitors. So you were present. Wasn't the same as having you here at the table, but it was workable.
We ran into some technical issues, but over
Yeah.
time we started to work them out.
Yeah. But then COVID hit, and then it's like, okay, you know what? We're just all gonna be remote, and so that's where we are now. So what are our options? You know, what do you do remote? How do you do remote?
Thankfully, over the past, I'd say 5-ish years, people have really been spreading out in their D&D and how they want to play it. They don't want to just play it in text. They want to play with their characters or their models, and they want to play it with people across the globe. So they've developed different ways to do it. And some of the more popular ones are, I'd say Roll20, which was rather recent. I'd say 3-4 years, maybe 5?
Yeah, Roll20 really got big about 3 years ago.
Okay, and then there's Fantasy Grounds, which is not on our list. Why is it not on our list?
Because we forgot about it.
Because we don't use it.
But, yeah, we tried Fantasy Grounds a little, and we tried Roll20. There's also is VTT a separate thing, or is that just a general descriptor of virtual tabletops?
I think that's a general descriptor. I do remember that there was another before Fantasy Grounds. There was another one that is not coming to mind, but it was really a pain to deal with.
Yeah, and of course Discord has been building out its gaming abilities.
And it's definitely one of the best ones for keeping track with people and being able to talk face to face with other people. One that I actually ran into this past couple of weeks as I'm getting to VR is that VR chat. There's just a massive VR worlds that people create. Has several worlds that are D&D, based off of D&D. They have a tabletop, they have dice that people can pick up with their avatars and throw, and they have the entire setup there.
Yeah, well, I mean, theoretically, anything where you have some kind of, preferably at least voice or video, connection to each other. You could do D&D in Second Life. You could do D&D over Telegram if you wanted to do that kind of thing. I mean, play by mail was a thing that existed in the 70s.
I'm sorry, you said Telegram, and my brain just went automatically to the old style Telegram, not Telegram the app. I'm thinking
No. I'm talking about the Telegram app. Yeah, no. Although play by mail was not that different, you know. On this turn, on this turn, I'm going to. Yeah. So, no, Flying Buffalo, who was the creator of Tunnels and Trolls and a bunch of other stuff, they made their money by running play by mail campaigns, which were mostly they were closer to like diplomacy type things. They were big turns where you controlled realms and things, as opposed to, you know, Togar says, "I smite thee, demon," and 25 cents into the postage, and off it goes. Right. So
you can imagine people complaining about the length of combat rounds now. Imagine having to wait 2 weeks just to find out if you.
Yeah, and as forums, as internet forums got big, you know, play by post became a thing. You know, so there's any kind of way that gaming can happen, people will do it. But for our group, we primarily focus on Roll20 plus Discord.
And we found it to be the easiest to use. Like, I tried to use Fantasy Grounds, and it just didn't work.
A lot of the people who are big in the vlogosphere use Fantasy Grounds, and I'm sure it's great, just based on the amount of products I've seen put together for it by fans and stuff. So I mean, it has plenty of a user base.
Oh yeah, I see modules for it, specifically in DM's Guild. You can purchase. Just a heads up, guys. I'm getting a bit of an echo. I don't know if anyone's.
I'm not getting it here.
I see on I forgot what I was talking about.
Fantasy Grounds.
But yeah, I see on
DM's.
DM's Guild, I see modules specifically made for Fantasy Grounds, and so there's got to be people who are using it a lot.
Yeah.
But when
Yeah.
I
Well,
went
I mean-
out to use it, it just became such a convoluted. It was complicated to set up, and I'm a technical minded person,
Yeah.
and it came to the point where like I could probably sit down and get this working within an hour or two, but I'm worried about the people who are less technologically minded, and you know, if anyone else decides to DM,
Yeah.
it's like, will they be able to do this? Will they be able to set this up the same way that I am setting it up, or
Yeah.
even with me, you know, trying to talk them through it. So
Yeah, and we had Roll20 up and sort of running already, you know, and we played around with it, and we're like, this works. We'll go with
works.
it. And
It was easy, and you know, if you really
Yeah.
needed more, it came with, I think, 50 megabytes of space to start off with.
yeah, the free thing is great for players, not so good for the DM.
Yeah, if you're DMing, just get the subscription.
Yeah, or get the group
$5 a
to
month.
pitch in for one or something. Yeah, something like that. So there's a lot of pros and cons. So we're going to talk mostly about Roll20 and Discord because that's what we use. But a lot of this stuff is going to be universal, like the specific software you use. You know, for chat, you could do Google Hangouts is where we started,
It
and
worked.
Zoom if you are a corporate person or whatever, you know. So
If you're a corporate person or someone with a school who has a school Zoom account,
yeah,
use it then. Don't use it otherwise.
point is the specific software doesn't matter as much as the general experience.
No.
So, but I mean, we talk some about the pros and cons of it. Since we're doing it anyway, we might as well like lean into the strengths. And that was something, especially when I started running in Roll20. I was like, if I'm going to use this tool, I'm going to use the heck out of it. So, you know, I started really getting into like finding the beautiful maps and creating tokens for everybody and all that jazz. Because I was like, this has opportunities for experiences that the tabletop can't provide. You know, and as much as I love my miniatures, you know, and as much as I love my fold-out maps,
You can still buy
I've
the
already
miniatures.
seen some-
oh
I've
yeah,
already seen some of the potential that it's like, if only I were technically minded, that would actually work, but I'm
Yeah.
not good at that.
yeah.
It's
So, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff that Roll20 and I'm sure Fantasy Grounds can do that the tabletop experience can't really provide. And I'm actually going to demo a little bit of that as we go. But it comes at a price, right?
yes.
So let me fire up Roll20 over here.
The funny thing is, I started using Roll20 in our group first because I started to DM,
Mhm.
and I basically just used the basics of it,
Mhm.
and you know, getting it rolling, getting us going into it, and then when COVID hit, and we
Mhm.
really need to start to use it again, or use it more
As our
as
primary.
our primary thing.
Yeah.
And Niche was the one that took it and ran with it. He's like, he was doing things with it that I just don't have the patience for. I'm like, dude, cool.
Yeah.
Do this
Yeah.
thing.
So I may get a little laggy over here as my system doesn't like handling all the graphics and the video. So bear with me if that happens. But I'm going to share my screen here so that you can see what I'm doing. If I can remember how to do that. Let's see.
Let's see if
Yeah.
Discord will adapt to this on the fly.
So this is a dungeon that I ran. I ran you guys through. You guys can see it moving around and stuff?
Yep.
All right, excellent.
Coming through fine.
Yep. So if we zoom out here, this is my DM's view of it. So it's going to look different from what the players saw. And so what this is a map that I got from a map maker. This one I believe is Forgotten Adventures, and we'll include a link to them down in the doobly-doo because they make very good maps. And the premise of this adventure was you guys were going off to slay a vampire who's been pestering a village full of lizard folk in my Tomb of Annihilation game. And this is not from Tomb of Annihilation. This is a side quest that's all stuff that I put together. And so, this gives you an idea of what you're looking at in a game, and you can zoom right in. So like here was the room with the big battle at the end. And we've got Jamie's character here. He's playing a bugbear, right? And Blitzy's character is floating around in here somewhere. She was a shifter paladin and stuff like that. And Surfy's lizard folk druid. And so this is during a battle. The players. I'm going to pick on Charlie here. So we're going to. This is what the room looked like to Charlie, with the dynamic lighting and the line of sight turned on. So when Charlie moved around, my mouse has stopped responding. Okay, I'll just use this one. So when Charlie would move around, the line of sight would change around the pillars.
And that is definitely something that has been an interesting addition to our game, having this dynamic lighting in a way that you can see
suddenly mazes become relevant. As far back as the old Gary Gygax modules, there have always been these twisty little mazes. But as long as you're just drawing it out on graph paper, it doesn't really matter. Like, the players never get lost.
And you have to imagine that you're not able to see behind you because or see in front of you unless the DM has some weird setup where they're just slowly revealing it over time.
Yeah. But if I change to Laria's halfling down here, suddenly the hallway becomes relevant. Like, she can't see into that room.
Right.
Right. And if she's down in this if she's down in this hallway, she can barely see around the corner. Right. And that was the first time we played with the dynamic lighting, and I was like, oh, that's Shade of the Candle's dark vision. That's cool. Suddenly I feel more like we're actually in the space.
And then we go to Lee's character. Does Lee have
Revion?
Yeah, does Revion have dark vision?
I believe he is a half-elf, so he probably does.
Well, in one of the previous campaigns, in my Everkeep campaign, Lee's character is a mouse folk that doesn't have dark vision in a group with everyone else has dark vision, or pretty much most people has dark vision. So I look at his perspective. He can't see crap.
Yeah, there's just his little icon in a big sea of dark.
Everyone else has this 60 feet of vision around him, and Jamie's character has 120 feet.
Yeah, because of the warlock. Yeah,
and so it really adds this different depth that you don't really get when you're at a table.
Yeah, we're describing, is that are those kobolds up there? What is that up there? And Leah's like, I don't see anything. What are you talking about? So it really gets across the importance of like vision in a way that is just very abstracted.
Now, do you have any special effects on this map?
Well, I've got the lighting, and that's the main thing. I don't use a lot of special effects because my computer can't handle most. But I do want to show there's a lot going on here under the hood. So if I turn on the dynamic lighting layer, you can see every little wall I drew. So all of these green lines that you're looking at over here, this tells the dynamic lighting where not to let light through. And so, like, I've got a light source here for this torch. And if I move it around, it's probably too subtle. You might be able to see where the shadows are.
Can't really see it.
So I mean, the reason this room is so bright is because there's like 6 torches in it.
Yes.
But the torch light doesn't go through the green wall, and when the doors are closed, we have the doors here on the dynamic lighting layer.
Oh, that's a good way to do that.
Yeah, that's how doors are pretty much done.
Oh, I'm stealing that.
Well, go right ahead. I mean, that's how they're supposed to work. So when that's done, if I switch back to the token layer, boop, You know, and we look at like Charlie again and see what Charlie can see. Now you can't see past the door because I moved the door back on the dynamic dynamic lighting layer. I moved the door back in place so that blocks off this hallway. So now you can't see over here. But that means as part of my game prep, you know, whereas normally I might be like collecting stat blocks and all that kind of stuff that takes a long amount of time, part of my game prep becomes prepping the map for use at the table, which means drawing all of this dynamic lighting.
And for some people, that might not just be dynamic lighting. So Roll20 also has things like you can create lightning bolts or fire breath, and you can let those go off at certain times or certain traps.
Create macros. In my Storm King's Thunder game, we had a character who was gifted with the ability to turn into a storm giant. So I had a little macro that would resize his icon, change it to match the storm giant, and set off a thunderclap sound effect.
It was really impressive.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff if you really get into it.
And you've also set up, I think in most of them, you have music playing in the background, at least some sort of subtle... I know that in the overland map, you have some subtle drum beat in the back, like a
Yeah, and that's built into Roll20. There's a bunch of free music you can use. And if you really want to, you can upload your own sounds. Like I created a custom sound effect for Tiamat's roar, not Tiamat, Emrith's roar, which is also the sound effect we hear at the beginning of the video with the logo. That roar.
And I decided to use the crab rave for a crab battle.
Yes, we did have the giant enemy crab rave. But talking about the overland map, actually, I want to show that.
Spoilers.
This is something else that Roll20 can do, is you can have handouts, you can have regional maps. So, like, Tomb of Annihilation has this giant hex crawl as part of the core of the adventure. And so, try not to look at stuff that's on this map that you guys shouldn't be able to see.
I see it every time I log in there because I accidentally log in as a DM.
Okay, so pretend you don't know where a lot of this stuff is.
I don't remember this.
Anyway, so like for a hex crawl, so let me actually move to the GM layer. There's rules about getting lost, right? So I have a token that's only on my GM layer called the party's actual location. But there's also the token on the regular layer that's where the party thinks they are. So every time that Surfy blew his survival check to navigate the map...
Which was every time.
Well, not every time, but it was a lot of times in succession. I would move you to where you thought you were, and on my layer, I'd move you to where you actually were. So that when you got lost again, I can figure out, okay, you think you've gone there, you've actually gone here. And so when you were trying to get to the Tomb of the Lizard King, it was just crazy just watching you go. It's not there. Not there. It's not there. It's not there. I mean, you literally were dancing all around it.
We weren't good at this.
Yeah.
But, well,
so,
the thing is, though, we have to admit that when it comes to this sort of stuff is that it does take a lot more prep. There's one thing that I like to say about Roll20 when we're doing it is that it takes a lot more forward prep as opposed to when you're doing it on a tabletop. You're doing you're doing the things that you would do at the table ahead of time.
Yeah.
So like you're setting up the set piece ahead of time as opposed to when you're at the table, you are putting down the set pieces, you're drawing the map at that time during the session.
Yeah, and it's really bad for improvisation. You know, if you guys suddenly say, screw the Burning Coast, we're going back to Everkeep, I'm like, okay, I'll see you next week because I don't have anything prepped for that, right? So like all the random encounters, I roll them up before the session starts so that I will have a map, I'll have the tokens I need, I'll have the monster stats I need. Now, the good part of that is it does force me to prep what I know is going to be used at the table. You guys still have freedom of choice. I'm still responding to your,
Right.
moving you where you want to go. You follow up on the quests that you want to follow up on.
Right.
But anything that's randomly generated, procedurally generated, etc., I need to do beforehand instead of doing on the fly. I mean, you can, and I do. Do I have it here?
I have tried to do it procedurally generated on the fly back in Everkeep, and it bogs things down because I have to go and create a new page. I have to put all of your icons on the page. I have to pull things onto the page, which, I mean, it's kind of like doing a random encounter at a table, but there's more steps to it, and I feel like it's slower than working it on a table.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you can do, like, you can have a blank map page and, your characters are walking up some steps. So here's the steps. Well, I didn't want the steps to be blue. So let me change my pen color to black. So here's some steps. You guys are climbing up the steps. Soup, soup, soup. That's not that different from drawing on a map, except that it's a little more awkward to do because you're doing it with a mouse, unless you have a Wacom tablet.
I'm sure that some DMs do.
Yeah, well, I do because I'm an artist. But so I mean, you can approximate that, and for some players, that's fine. We just want it for positional. So yeah, so I mean, that's what online gaming kind of looks like. You saw, you have a couple of heads and a map, and
there's a lot of pros to it, definitely. But we covered a couple of the cons, like the forward prep time.
Yep.
What would we say are some more cons that would go with
Well, that's
this?
why I wanted to bring Jamie in here, because he has strong opinions on the matter, and I wanted to get him to express those opinions.
Oh God, words.
It's all right.
It's okay.
We'll edit out. We'll edit out anything that sucks.
Yeah, well, no, it's just finding the right words.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the kind of person that in almost everything I do in my life, direct interaction is better than everything else. I don't like talking on the phone.
Well, who does?
Because it's all the disconnect with people.
Mm-hmm.
When we were doing the 4 of us in a room and the rest of you on the screen, occasionally I would forget the rest of you were all there till you spoke.
Sometimes we did run into that because it'd be like we're trying to talk.
Because I'm the kind of person that actually, if I'm in the same room with somebody and 2 people are talking, I will wait for an opening. But it became the opposite when there was the people just on the screen, because then I don't have that visual personal connection clue that you're talking.
Yeah, you can't interrupt somebody on television. They're not a real person.
Yeah, you kind of get that impression that
it's just I can't. I have great trouble with that.
Hmm.
Well, we've kind of been, for most of our lives, we've been used to people talking at us, like on a screen, like Nish said, through a TV. So we're used to people talking at us, and they don't exist. Like they're just I
need the connection. When I'm DMing and I would remember to look over at the screens and go, "Are you guys still with me?"
Hmm.
But as a player, I'm focused on what's going on, and I have Nietzsche and his wife and Lee doing things and being people around me, and then he says someone else, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, they're over there."
Well, we also do have a slight. One thing that we ran into with our previous setup was there was a slight technical restriction in that we only had one monitor with everyone on it, and everyone was just a small talking head.
Yeah.
And you could barely see us in general. And we also ran into the issue where maybe every 5 to 10 minutes, either we would cut out and it would look like we're talking. You can't hear anything we're saying. Or Niche or you would do the same thing. You'd be talking and you'd be going, and it's just nothing.
And we'd be talking to you, and you're like, "What is he saying?" And you didn't hear
were
that.
we attacked? Yeah. What just happened?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'd start occasionally. We came up with like a sign language of doing this, and so we could like communicate. Oh, wait, you can't hear me. Okay, so we need to reboot and kick that and all that jazz. But yeah, I mean, that was a thing. But I'm also with the whole remove of it, like some things are easier because like all I have to do now is look at the screen instead of look at that person, look at that person, look at that person, and look at the screen. Most of the time I can just focus on right here, but some things are a lot harder. Like, we mentioned in the last episode about having a large group and like waiting for your turn, and it can be real tempting if play is bogged down or whatever to, I'm going to check Twitter while this is going on, and then somebody is like poking you and going, oh, it's my turn. What did I miss? Right.
Yeah. You don't have that visual of someone picking up their phone and going, okay. You can't go and say, hey, stop that.
Yeah.
Unless it's a case of me where I start, if I turn to another page, you will suddenly see my face turn white because I don't have enough light in my room. And suddenly it's the white light of my monitor on my face. You know that I've turned away.
So you mean I shouldn't be tabbed out of Roll20 and on YouTube watching videos?
No.
No, you really shouldn't be. You're welcome to tab out of Roll20 and just look at Discord. That's okay. But like watching YouTube, no. Watch YouTube bad. Don't do that.
I mean, there's definitely various degrees of checking out when it's not your turn, or when when the DM is focused on a specific player. But at the same time, if someone is going to YouTube and watching a video, that really it takes them out of the game more than it really affects us.
Yeah,
and it impacts.
Actually, I don't really do that. I did that last week while we were doing all of the zero, but we were mostly just talking.
Yeah, well, last week session 0 is there's lots of
when we're inside the game.
It's totally different.
Yeah.
The only time I did that was when I wanted to point some things out and drop it in the.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, a little bit of side chatter, a little bit of checking out stuff. This group actually has been very good about that. I think most of us, particularly most of us are big old D&D nerds in the first place, so the D&D is more interesting than YouTube anyway.
Yeah.
But even when it's not,
we're more interesting than YouTube because we're just such geeks.
Yeah, really. But I mean, even when it's not, most of us are very good about respecting each other's attention and time and stuff like that. It hasn't really been a problem for us, but I have heard it as a complaint from people talking about, online playing generally.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of it. I guess more of an issue. Like I said, you said we don't see it as much, but there's definitely more of the distractions. There's more of what's going on around you.
Yeah.
As opposed to, sitting down and choosing to make this your D&D time.
Yeah. And, if you're all in a room around a table, it's very immediate. It's very in front of you. But if you're in your own house staring at a screen, there's a lot around to distract you, which is the same as trying to work from home in this kind of environment or any kind of project like that. I mean, it's for D&D instead of for work, but it's the same issue.
Have a continuation of things that I was saying.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Another thing that I have trouble with is that because normally I'm the patiently wait somebody out until there's an opening to say something. A lot of the things that I would do at the table to just generally make the personality of my character known is a lot harder to do because then those openings aren't as open to me, and I feel like I got to wait. Let me just interject this in real quick.
Yeah, there's a lot more social cues that you really have to look for. You know, when you're face to face with somebody, a lot of stuff you can see by their body language or whatever that, you know, they have something they're ready to, you know,
Yeah,
they're going to say or whatever. But here it's all heads.
It's definitely much harder to see when someone is trying to interject with something.
Yeah.
When you're seeing someone through a camera, you can't see those subtle eye glances, or you might not be able to see their hands, you know, reaching towards the camera to gesture or something. So having something like that, we haven't worked out anything in our case, but having some way to, I guess, raise your hand or to make
it feels a little weird to go, hey, I want to say something. But...
my turn.
That's why while whoever's running the game is discussing the next thing, and the action has actually moved on from where I want to be still, because I haven't finished there personally, I put it in Discord and send it to the group going, hey, my character did this, acted like this, just so you guys know.
Yeah. We have a large group, and there's always a lot of chatter too that you have to like break through to get into.
We just like to talk.
The meaningful. Yeah, but I mean, Plots wants to do his character's thing, and Surfy wants to do his character thing, and I want to do my character's thing, and Jamie wants to do his character's thing.
And I just wanted you to find the plot over here.
Yeah, so you know, half of the reason that Jamie's character thing gets walked past is he's waiting for a chance to speak, and we're all talking over each other, you know. So it's like, as the DM in an environment like this, you have to be a lot more careful about managing focus.
Yeah.
You know, at a table, usually it's the loudest player will get the most attention naturally. Anyway, but in a situation like this where everybody's loud because you've equalized the volume and things like that, then it becomes a lot harder for that dynamic to come through. But B, the DM really has to be like, we haven't heard from Lee.
That is
in the past 10 minutes.
What
are you doing, Lee?
That I like to do as well is definitely to point out, try and give each person an extra moment. Even if they don't want to, even if they don't have any idea of what their character is going to do, I'd say, hey, are you doing anything? And then I'll go around robin. I'll try to do it quickly because there will always be someone who will take up more time.
Yeah. But I mean, to your point, Jamie, about typing stuff into the Discord, like that's a double-edged sword. It is a great way of putting in little flourishes that are just for the fun of it or just a role-playing moment. And it can be distracting because then, we talked in last episode about something's going on and suddenly the DM's, what was that message, right? So it's one of those things where we're still sort of working it out.
For me, that was the only thing I could do without stumbling over people, which I've had people tell me, please stop stumbling over people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing that has been a stumbling block in my part when it comes to DMing is that I am ADHD, and if I start getting on a roll, I have to be on that roll. And if things are going on around me, I usually am blocking everyone else talking out. So I'm not listening to them. So I'm going through the plot or going through my spiel, and they're chattering random stuff, and then suddenly something bleeps on my screen or Discord draws my attention. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. But I mean, I think really what it boils down to is that it's important as a DM and as other players for all of us to be sort of trying to make space for each other in a way online that you don't have to do as much at the table.
No.
Like at the table, the people who want to be heard will make themselves heard. The people who want to watch will watch, and you'll be fine. Online, it's a lot harder to naturally fall into that rhythm. So it's something that everybody at this table really needs to be aware of and to be working on.
One thing I did think of also is that it does definitely make it harder to be the more boisterous role player. Like, people who will stand up as they're role playing and, walk around the table. As you can see,
Yeah.
doesn't quite work when I'm standing up and you can't.
Yeah.
Suddenly my head's cut off.
Yeah, you need to learn a different way, especially as a DM. You need to learn a different way of like commanding the space. And sometimes I do that by getting into the camera, and sometimes I do things like that. But yeah, it is a thing, and if you're used to gesturing, or even if just my back is tired, I want to stand up for a bit. All right, so you guys are headed across the swamp, and this quest sucks, but you're on your butt in a chair for however many hours.
3-4 hours.
Yeah, but the downside of that is, or the flip side of that is, when you are not central to what's going on, you can just type bio BRB, and it's not too distracting,
right?
Because you just go do your thing. But one other thing about the online stuff is the technical limitations. Like my computer, I'm on a Mac.
Yeah, you're showing it off every so often here.
Yeah, I'm on a Mac that is perfectly good for doing my art projects on, but Macs don't like dynamic graphics. They don't like video. They don't like ray tracing, which is how the Roll20 dynamic lighting works.
They don't like Discord.
They don't like Discord. Yeah. So and that's a thing that happens a lot with me. And I'm working on changing up my system, but in the meantime, that is a thing that we've got going on with gaming. And the other thing is, instead of like rummaging through a box looking for the right miniature, sometimes on Roll20, I'm like, why are you guys not seeing what I'm doing? Oh, I put it on the wrong layer.
You're on the wrong layer again.
Yeah. Or, whatever. Or, Saturday night, everybody's playing D&D on Roll20. So I'm clicking buttons and nothing's happening.
Or Roll20 and our macros stop working suddenly. And we're like, okay, yeah. I need to go and kick the sandbox and make sure the API is working.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the words of Scotty, the more they overthink the plumbing, the easier it is to stop up the drain. And online gaming is a very complex technological feat. It's actually, if you sit and look at it and think about it, it's like, holy crap, this is amazing. But it is also held together by spit and baling wire and falls apart a lot. And you have to
right there.
Sort of be ready for that.
Thank you for that example.
I don't know. Have we covered everything? Is there anything?
I think that's pretty much everything. But I mean, definitely remote gaming is here to stay. I mean, who knows how long this pandemic is going to go on for? And even after that, like, it has definitely made it easier for people just across the world to game with each other. And it's no longer, having to, sharing a player's handbook in the library. Now it is, you're in the comfort of your own home, DMing with someone in California or Europe. And it's definitely expanded the game. Far beyond, the pandemic, which hopefully soon will be a shadow that we're waving at.
Yeah, it's going to be like the flu in the 30s. We just don't talk about it,
We just don't talk about 2020.
Yeah. I'll be happy to see the end of that. How about you, Jamie? Do you have anything else you want to cover? Or you think is worth covering?
I don't personally have anything now.
No? Okay. You were going to say something?
I didn't got anything.
No? Okay. So we'll hop into the outro. So for next time, we're looking at possibilities, and viewers asked for this one last time, so that's what we did, the remote gaming episode.
It's definitely so been on everyone's mind.
Yeah, it really has. So we're going to throw out some topics for next time and see if people will choose one that they like. We mentioned reskinning last time as a possibility,
which is definitely something that 5e is really good for. Like,
yep.
Just one example that something reskinned in a previous campaign was I wanted to play a kobold. I didn't like the kobolds and Volos. Niche said, how about taking a halfling, changing a couple of these abilities, and hola, you got a kobold.
Yep.
And that's just the beginning. You can skin it into so many different things.
Yep. And especially with like the new options that are going to be in Tasha's, I think there's going to be a lot of possibilities there. Yep. So another option, we mentioned furry D&D last time. Furry D&D is still a thing that we could talk about.
Look, I just can't get past this.
Yeah.
I gotta play my fuzzy things.
Yeah.
Whether it's I haven't played Tabaxi yet. That is so weird for me. But
yeah. So Laurie is going to be the requisite furry in Plotlines game. So.
I'm gonna be the Aarakocra. That's still a furry.
Yeah. But I mean, also we're using furry here as a lump for any sort of anthropomorphic or weirdy, like anything. They could be the Warforged in Eberron. You know, they're robots.
Kind of, but we're also talking not just playing furry for the sake of furry, but how to actually apply it into your games.
Yeah, and it's been around forever. People think about the furry fandom as being like this recent thing, but in the original AD&D Monster Manual, Gary Gygax wrote about that person who always wants to play a dragon, and how do you accommodate that?
That would be me.
Yeah. So I mean, it's nothing new. It's nothing new, but it's always worth exploring. And the other thing that I thought of, which is the idea of 5e, especially being boring.
I don't know where that's coming.
Yeah,
from.
I don't get that. But I've been seeing a lot of stuff about people saying, "Oh, 5e combat is so boring," and I'm like, what are you talking about?
I mean, it can drag on, but there are ways to get past that, and there are ways to really spice it up and improve.
Yeah, well, I'm also like
miss doing the math.
I guess, but I'm like, have you ever played something like Rollmaster? You want boring combat? Oh my god, the 2 or 3 times we played 4E, you want boring combat?
That's boring
wow.
combat.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of experience in things beyond 3.5 Pathfinder and Shadowrun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've done a lot of different systems. Some of them I've done with Jamie. And I know from boring combat, and honestly, I always found earlier editions of D&D, like pre-3 D&D, to be quite boring. Some of that was because I sort of I hadn't learned to see past the written word of the book yet.
It takes time.
But some of it is also, it just didn't provide you a framework for it. Right.
Yeah.
D&D, the 5e has like the skill checks and the hazards damage table and all this kind of stuff that the earlier editions just didn't have. It just sort of, the DM will make a ruling, decide a percentage chance something will succeed, move on.
Yeah, I feel like that if no one tells us something they want to talk about, this is what we're going to talk about next time.
It could be.
You definitely seem to have an opinion on this.
I got opinion on all this stuff, but
all right.
Anyway, so vote for reskinning furry or D&D 5e is boring, or if you have something you would like us to talk about, tell us, because
we talk about it for 45 minutes to 50.
Yeah. I mean, we want to come up with things that are useful for people. Like,
interesting to talk about.
Yeah, we want to be a service for the gaming community, so,
or at least fun to listen to.
Yeah, but I mean, it can be both.
In either case, Jamie, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you, Guest Geek, and we will see you all next time.
This is plug Patreon. Do we have a Patreon?
I have a Patreon. Yeah,
Patreon.
I have a Patreon. So I am the Niche. So D_Niche, I believe, on Patreon, and we'll put a link in the doobly-doo. And it's primarily related to my art and my comics and things like that. But if you would like to support geekery in the meantime, feel free to drop some stuff on my Patreon, and I will make sure that it gets applied to what we're doing here. So. Because we do have a few costs. There's the hosting and all that jazz.
This water doesn't come off trees.
Yeah. So, yeah.
In any case, as they say,
like, subscribe, blah blah blah. Yeah, all that stuff.
And good night.
Night night.
I think I'm the only one who's not wearing a D&D shirt, because I wore my D&D shirt last time.
There you go.